Whoa, I guess I've just been procured. So let's talk about procurement. Procurement is at the center of every business. It takes care of obtaining what the business needs for its operations. I'm going to show you how Ariba goes one step further by merging all the functions of procurement into one single tool that even includes finance and the suppliers. So let's start this journey with a concrete example. Peter, our security officer, will be needing first aid kits. Now, this is only one example of many MRO, goods, services that are covered by procurement. Let's go quickly over the process. We'll come back with a demo. So Peter goes into the internal catalog and makes a requisition with first aid kits. This then needs to be approved by his boss, and then it becomes a purchase order. For the sake of simplicity, when you see blue, it's related to the buying process. When it's going to be orange, it's the pay or the supplier interaction. And later, when we're going to look at green, it will be the planning phase. So, the supplier receives the purchase orders, confirms it, and sends a delivery notification, for example. At that point, Peter receives the good into the system so that when the supplier sends an invoice, it can be matched with the purchase order and with the receipt for good compliance, and it's ready to be paid. Now, this was part 2 of the procurement process. It was the operational part. Now, where do you think this first aid kit came from in the first place? Well, it came from a contract. And this contract was negotiated with many suppliers that were pre-qualified, registered, and some of them were even discovered in emerging markets, for example. And all of this is based on the procurement planning that you did in the beginning of the year, based on your spend analytics. So you see now in green how the planning phase gets then executed during the buying process, all the way up to the supplier that sends an invoice. So what gets paid is what was negotiated, and what gets planned gets executed. And this is how Ariba merges the planning, buying, and execution or paying phase of the process all under one tool, under one login, both for the supplier and for the buyers. So let's look at what it looks like. Let's start with guided buying. Guided buying is our new interface that makes it super easy for all the users to find what they need. So Peter searches for first aid kit, he finds the article that he needs, provides a quantity, clicks buy now, and in 3 clicks, he's done. Let me come back here for a sec. Oh, sorry, my watch is sending me a notification. I've got something on my mobile. So let's look at this. Ariba Mobile. I have the app here. I need to log in. Yeah. And then what do I see? Oh yeah, I see I've got work to do. 17 things to approve. So let's look at this. I see here the list of requisition. First aid kit, $5,000 US. Let's look at the details. Note that the original requisition was made in euros, so we support currencies. So this is all fine, so I'm going to go back here and approve and give a little, thanks here. And there we are, I've done my approval. So for casual users, a lot of things can be done straight out of the mobile. It even includes the requisition and the shopping in the catalog that you saw earlier on. So this has now become a purchase order. So let's continue the demo with the supplier side. So the buyers are not the only one to get mobile apps. You have them as well for the sales guy on the supplier side. And here, the supplier can see his order, and the first one is the order that was initiated by Peter. The supplier will confirm this order to let Peter know when it's going to be delivered. That's very handy to have a status about the delivery and expediting information.
At this point, we will need to remind Peter that he should do the receiving. So we send him an email and we do a little sneaky thing on him. We ask him to rate his purchase just to incentivize him to actually do the receiving. Once that's done, the supplier goes back into his screen to create an invoice. But before that, let's notice that this is the same place where the supplier will see his proposals or where he can negotiate contract. So from the purchase order, the supplier will create an invoice. It will convert the information from the purchase order to the invoice. But we put a lot of rules. We make your compliance happen at the supplier side. Here, the supplier tried to put the date in the past. And the system said, no, you can't do that. You have to comply with your buyer's rules. And those rules can make about 80% of all the accounts payable problems go away. It's really a high efficiency way to process invoices. Another example of those rules, here if the supplier changes the quantity from 100 to 200, another stop. The system says you cannot create this invoice. This invoice is not compliant. Please correct it. And so only when the supplier has corrected everything can he submit this invoice back to the buyer. At this point, this invoice has been sent to the buyer and it can be reconciled with the purchase order and the receipt for a good three-way match that will release the payment. We can see this matching happening here on the buyer side. You see the invoice, and as a reference, you can see all the documentation, the purchase order, the receipt, the invoice, and the payment. All of this in one place, so accounts payable can manage those invoices there. On the supplier side, the same story. He sees the purchase order, he sees the information about the invoice that he created, and he can see the scheduled payments for this invoice